Hey everybody, Shane Severson here, Legacy Realty, coming to you on this gorgeous Tuesday. And so I wanted to reach out and do our Tips Tuesday. For this week, I want to address a question that comes up quite often, and that is this idea of, Shane, why do you always talk about reaching out before I sell, before I buy months ahead of time? Normally, I talk about reaching out 2 to 3 months before you're going to do something. And I think, not that anybody necessarily thinks this, but I think in the back of your mind, there may be this question or thought of, is that a sales ploy to start conversations, to get people thinking about it and so forth? And trust me when I say it's not a sales ploy. It really does take 2 to 3 months in preparation on a purchase or a buy in most cases. So I wanted to take just a couple minutes and share with you a couple real life examples that are going on right now with my clients, and one that just closed and a few other that are in the process, so that you can see that these are real life examples of what is going on in people's lives. Let me start with some buyers. I have a couple buyers right now, many buyers, but two that I will talk about, and that is one buyer had an issue that they, no issue with their credit. Credit was great, everything else, but they had a couple bills that they had on their credit. And when looking at their pre-approval, found out that if they paid one of these things off, which pretty small, but their credit score would go up and their interest rate would drop way down. There are benchmarks in credit where if you hit this next level, it could be 1% higher, could be 10% or 10 points, higher, 1 point higher, your interest rate can drop quite a bit, believe it or not. And so this buyer found out that if they just paid off this one little thing, that their credit score would go above that benchmark. And as they hit that, their interest rate would drop and put them in a whole different category. And they ended up saving, in the process of saving, almost $200 a month. Now, here's the deal. In the entire scheme of things, $200 a month is huge anyway, but then when you look at the whole scheme of things, that is huge savings. Now, that savings came through a couple different things that we did in the pre-approval, not just their credit score, but you can see that process did take a couple months to get it all done, pay it off, have it register and everything, and they ended up saving a ton of money. Calculate that over a 10-year process and tell me how valuable that was for them to reach out 2 months before they needed to buy. I've got another another buyer that's in the process, and they were qualifying, but they had a few other loans, a few other homes, investment properties, that one of their investment properties they had to get out of a particular loan. Now, this is for an entirely different message going into details of loans, but they had a particular loan that they had taken out that would not allow them to get another single family owner occupant loan. So they had to go through the process of refinancing that loan before they could then qualify for the best loan that they could get in that situation. That process took them, again, you guessed it, a couple months, and we are wrapping that up as we speak. So both of those scenarios took 2 months. Let me tell you about two sellers going on. I've got one right now that is in the process. After we look at it, they knew by the time they sold, they had to fix a water leak, not a major one, but as with drywall, made some damage, and they needed to fix some of that. They needed to paint, they needed to do some things, and as you can guess, the contractor is kind of giving them in the runaround, 1 week, week turned to actually about a month and a half. And so that process has taken them a couple months from beginning to end. And in order to hit the peak and not miss that market trend, it's taken them a couple months. I also have an investor that is planning on selling, and we have some lease issues. And you wouldn't think about this, but it takes time to give notice to your tenant. Their leases were up. You had to give notice. It took 30 days for that notice to come out. Then when we get in there, as you can imagine, there's not huge damage, but just some things that are pretty obvious that you'd want to fix before you listed in order to get top dollar. So that process took in our case, took about 3 months, but normally with those leases and so forth, it takes a couple months to get those all notices and then get repairs and then get it on the market. I also have one investor right now, just through market trends, was getting ready to sell. We waited about 3 months in order to sell. They started that conversation about 3 months ago, and because of that, they ended up making, I think we figured it, about just over $20,000 by waiting 3 months. That is why we reach out before. So if you're a buyer, if you're a seller, if you're an investor, you're thinking about doing something, but in the back of your mind, like, I don't want to bother Shane, I don't want to reach out too far in advance. Trust me, you cannot start the process too early. I've got many clients now already planning for next year, making sure that we time it perfect. If that's you, if you are wondering why, that is why. Reach out, let me make you $20,000. It's well worth the extra time. God bless. I hope that helps. We'll see you next Tuesday.